This is the 2024 class, and we're sort of closing the chapter on it, putting a nice little bow on it. Again, Josh Newberg's got recruiting year-round coverage for you on the On The Recruits channel.
But I'm ready to put 24 to bed.
There. 24, night, no alarm clock.
Because I really want to talk 25, but it's hard. It's like how hard can we go on 2025 when we still have this little bit of a chapter to finish here in this book? You know, you can't start another book before you. Well, at least me, I can't.
No, I can't.
I can't.
That's too much. Well, how about this? Let's put on the swim trunks and let's dive head first into 2025.
All right.
What do you say? Let's get to it. I mean, it's very, very early, but let's kind of just unpack some of these headlines. And as with any recruiting class, as with any college football story, you got to start with the quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
Bryce Underwood's committed.
Wait, tell me which one you want to talk about.
You know, let's talk that one.
That one.
Let's talk Bryce Underwood. Okay. For those that are tuned in live and understand the visual of that, if you're on podcast, I apologize, but we're looking at a lower third of Julian Lewis and Bryce Underwood. Let's talk some Bryce Underwood, Josh. What do you say?
Yeah, Bryce Underwood. So for those tuning in right now, the number one prospect in America, the number one recruit in the 2025 cycle, and the number one QB is committed to LSU. But he's from Belleville, Michigan, and picked the Tigers over the Wolverines and Alabama. Took a visit to Colorado as well. Can't forget them. But chose LSU over Michigan in a year where the hometown team wins the national championship. And you know, the writing was really on the wall with he took a flurry of visits in the spring and into the fall to LSU in succession, whereas he did not visit Michigan during the season until December. Literally one of the final weekends before the dead period hit in the early signing period, he finally made it to campus. But at that point, LSU already had the lead. They were trending. I had already put my prediction in for LSU, and he made his commitment on January 6th to the LSU Tigers, giving the Tigers the number one class in America. They now have the number one QB. LSU has the number one wide receiver in DeCorian Moore. They have the number one running back in Harlan Berry, and the number one safety in America, Pickett, is considering them.
Ooh, okay, so it's heating up.
They are stacking number ones. It's unbelievable. LSU off to a great start. If you're just tuning into 2025 recruiting, the number one QB is off the board, and he is committed to LSU. You see it. Look at DeCorian Moore, the number 4 player overall. He's committed to LSU. Harlan Berry, the number 12 player overall. He's committed to LSU. I told you, DJ Pickett, the number 1 safety in America. He has a great relationship with Corey Raymond, who just went back to LSU. This LSU class is something serious. We know Georgia's about to turn up. We know Ohio State's going to turn up. Sure. We know some of these others are about to get it really cranking, but LSU is the team right now that has all the momentum.
And the thing that's interesting, Josh, like you look back, like let's say we'll turn back the clock 10 years ago, and LSU is this team that's, you know, physical, and we would always say, like, man, if they could just get a quarterback, if they could just get it right offensively, they would be nasty. And I mean, since that era, you've had Joe Burrow under a different staff, obviously, but I mean, he and that offense, they were historic. You have to imagine that helped the LSU brand.
But recruits still associate that with the program.
Totally saw that. So, and then you had Jaden Daniels this past year win the Heisman Trophy, and Malik Neighbors is going to be probably a first-round draft pick. And so you have that, you know, image living in the mind of these recruits. And I have to imagine that plays, I don't know how big a factor, but at least some small factor in landing a guy like a Bryce Underwood, and then the top receiver and running back in this class so far. Like it's becoming an offensive school, not an offensive school, but a school that can recruit the offensive side as well as the defensive side. And that's kind of changing their brand in some ways, Josh.
And hey, it's coming soon, because next year, this time, Bryce Underwood will be enrolled.
That's crazy.
I want to say LSU.
Yeah. You would think,
but I know Michigan's going to double back. Like, you know, there's going to be a moment, and I'm not saying he's going to flip. I'm not saying, well, what I am saying is there's going to be a moment where Michigan makes another run at him.
I think it's malpractice if you don't, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
You have to, like you say, recruit through the whistle.
Yeah.
Recruit through the whistle.
Now we recruit through the next play because of the short-term signee rule. Like, I don't know when you stop recruiting.
You got to keep recruiting. ABC, always be recruiting. That's kind of the name of the game in college football. Speaking of always be recruiting, and speaking of quarterbacks sticking with commitments or maybe going elsewhere, let's move to the other side of that lower third. How am I doing this? Yeah, there, right there. Boom. Julian Lewis, committed to USC. since his commitment has reclassified to 2025, fresh off a visit to Georgia. That's obviously the in-state school for him. Where do you think stand with him? And I mean, what's the latest in your mind with Julian Lewis?
It's gotten very real with Julian Lewis for the reasons that I just said. He was a 2026 prospect about a month ago. And if you're sitting here as a 2026 prospect, you're thinking, I got time.
Yeah.
This thing's fun. I'm going to enjoy the process. I'm committed to USC. Then he reclassifies to 2025 just recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then it sets in what I just said. You realize that 1 year from now, this time next year, Julian Lewis will be enrolled.
That's crazy.
At the school he's going to be playing his next 4 years at.
They grow up so fast, you know?
So Julian Lewis, yeah, they do grow up so fast. And recruitments come at you very fast, too. That's why this one kind of just ratcheted up on a drop of a dime, because it became real. It became, hey, am I really going to USC? Am I going to go check out other schools? The answer is yes. Julian Lewis visited Colorado, visited Georgia, tried to get to Alabama. I believe he still will get to Alabama, visited Auburn. He's looking around. He says, I want to close this thing out. I don't know what exactly that means, but to me, if you're already committed and you're saying, I'm going to take a few trips and then close this thing out, I think he's going to flip.
Yeah.
He hasn't said that. I just think the writing on the wall, you know, he committed. He's from Carrollton, Georgia.
Yep.
He committed early to USC. And don't cry for Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley will still get his guy, whether it's Julian Lewis or somebody else. Lincoln Riley will get his quarterback. But I just think that when it becomes real, I think you start looking a little bit closer to home. And that's what Julian Lewis is doing. So he thinks he's going to work through this fairly quickly and come to I don't want to put words in his mouth, a final decision, but ultimately, I mean, he is coming to a final decision.
That's kind of the way it's shaping up. And the thing that's so interesting about this, like if we rewind the tape another year back and kind of think about the way that Lincoln Riley's been perceived, and honestly still is perceived, like he is the quarterback guru in college football. Not that there's other good people with the quarterback position.
But he has that designation right now.
Totally. And for Julian Lewis to be like, I could go play for him, or I could go to Georgia, or insert whatever other school you want to talk about there. Just kind of a wild time in college football, kind of a wild time in recruiting that we're talking about Lincoln Riley potentially not hanging on to one of the top recruits. Now that hasn't happened
yet.
And
it shows how valued Julian Lewis is, and how much leverage he has in this situation. He can openly say, I'm looking into some things. And Lincoln Riley can't say anything about it. It speaks to the talent that Julian Lewis is.
The whole thing is very interesting, and obviously we'll track it all the way through the whistle, all the way through the first, second signing period and beyond. I mean, that's what we do here on the On3 YouTube channel, the On3 Recruits channel as well. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.